if we end up with Aldis versus Orton, which is what I want to see, man, that is a weird spot for Solo Sikoa. It really is. It feels like WWE has completely dropped the ball on Solo Sikoa in 2025. He kicked off the year losing to Roman Reigns on the Raw on Netflix debut. It was the first match ever on Raw on Netflix, was Roman Reigns versus Solo Sikoa for the Ulufala. Solo loses it. And now the question becomes, all right, how do we follow this up? What's next for Solo? Because that is the very end of this storyline that he began right after WrestleMania last year. So what happens next for Solo? Nothing. That ended up being the answer. Absolutely nothing. He disappears for weeks. When he does show up, he shows up with his tail between his legs, like he was a dog that got kicked. And all of a sudden, he comes back as Jacob's number 2. Now, that's eventually going to build to a conflict and end up resulting in a match. But when is that? Are we going to draw that out to SummerSlam? And if that's the case, man, that is such a far fall for Solo Sikoa, who was booked as the main event match of SummerSlam of last year. To go from that to maybe being a backup plan for a Randy Orton match at Mania, where he could potentially lose out on that spot to the SmackDown general manager who has not wrestled in WWE, at least not for a very long time. That is such a far fall for Solo Sikoa. Now, here's the thing. When everybody looks back at his run as the new tribal chief or the tribal chief to the Bloodline 2.0, a lot of people didn't like it. A lot of people were not entertained. And I thought early on, it was a little rough. It was a slow start. And part of the excitement early on was, well, what's going to happen with Roman Reigns when he comes back? When is Roman Reigns going to come back? And look at all these new faces. Tama Tonga's debuting. Tonga Loa's debuting. Then eventually, Jacob Fatu debuts. And you're saying, oh, this is all exciting. And then it kind of hit a lull. And it got to the point where he was probably prematurely placed in the main event of SummerSlam against Cody Rhodes. That entire situation just didn't work. And then post, he just didn't have the star power to go head-to-head with Roman Reigns. And it was not believable that Solo Sikoa and his new bloodline was going to be able to hold off Roman Reigns and eventually Jimmy and Jey Uso and Sami Zayn as they all came back together before the War Games match. So it was not, at the end of the day, I think, as successful as WWE would have hoped it to be. I think they wanted this to be a star-making storyline for Solo Sikoa, and it just fell flat. But man, to go from that, putting him in those positions, to not even having him on the card at WrestleMania, it's going to put a huge emphasis on what they do with him post-Mania. What that program looks like between him and Jacob Fatu is going to have a lot of an indication on whether or not Solo Sikoa continues his fall to the bottom of the card, or if he can sustain and become an upper middle card guy, which is, I think, what his current ceiling would be. But man, it was just too many losses during the tribal chief reign. It was really just wins in tag team matches. He never really won in one-on-one matches. And the poison pill was Jacob Fatu. He was just too good, too fast. He was too blockbuster, too fast. He was too big of a star, too fast, to where it wasn't believable that Jacob Fatu was a number 2 in any stable whatsoever. Jacob Fatu is a star, and that's what I don't think WWE counted on. They didn't expect Fatu to come in and immediately be one of the most exciting wrestlers that they have to offer on any show. And that's just what happened. And it overshadowed Solo. But if you look at some of his work, maybe not the overarching stuff, maybe not the big matches, and that's another reason that people don't like it. But once Solo started to get comfortable, once he started letting some of that goofiness out, I thought his run was a lot better. And I think that's what he needs to tap into. When Solo Sikoa tries to be overly serious, he's boring. Because he's not as intimidating in ring as somebody like Jacob Fatu is. Jacob Fatu can be overly serious, which he never is. And you'd believe it. If Fatu was stoic, you'd believe that he is still a serious threat. When Solo is stoic, you just don't believe it enough. So I think you have to do exactly what they're doing with Jacob. I mean, the roadmap is there. Let them be themselves. Jacob as himself is a star. Solo as himself, we saw it time and time again. Whenever he was laughing, joking, being kind of pompous, that was the best version. You got to let him do it. But man, it's kind of starting from the ground up for Solo Sikoa, somebody who through 2024, the company put a lot of weight behind, and it has not translated to results in 2025. The payoff just wasn't there. So we'll see if he ends up getting the matchup against Randy Orton. If he does, I'll be interested in it. I'm not going to say it's one of my most, intriguing matches of WrestleMania weekend, but I'll be interested in it.